Hello everyone, how's it going? Billy Ballgame here, back with another video. Today's video, I'm going to talk about SGC. And for those of you that have been following the channel for a while, I'm a big fan of SGC. And I like them a lot. I'm going to talk about the things I do like today and some of the things that maybe I don't like quite as much. So here recently, I've been getting a lot of comments on my videos, something to the effect of, why would you have an SGC graded card? And everybody, that's fine. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion. Everybody's entitled to have their favorite grading company. I'm not trying to sway anyone's opinion on any of that. I'm just telling you why I like SGC, and they are my personal preferred grading company. But none of them are perfect, and they all definitely have some warts. And so, like I said, I'm going to touch on the positives and the negatives in my mind of SGC today. But before I do that, I'm going to spin this camera around. I've done a few updates to the Mancave, and this will only take a couple minutes. I wanted to show some of my new displays that I've put out, and I also wanted to show Dan what I did with the King Griffey Jr. bat that I just got from him not too long ago. If you've watched that video, you know what I'm talking about. So hang on for just a second. I'll show you the new displays in the Mancave. Then I'll show you some SGC cards, talk about what I like and don't like about SGC. I'll be right back with you. All right, we're going to start off at my desk where I film my videos, and I have a few new displays. These you've seen in the backgrounds of my videos, but above that, and you've seen these too. But above that, up toward the ceiling, I have some other, what I call all-time great Cardinals rookie cards. Then over here, I have the McGuire 1998 starting lineup that I bought recently. I showed these in my initial Mancave tour video, so this is all on this same wall. And then I added a few Albert Pujols graded cards that I have. There's my bobblehead that my wife got me for Christmas. And then over here on this wall, I got this from the basement collection. This is basically a program from 1948 for the Cardinals. I finally got this in a frame and put it up, and I love this. It's just amazing to me. And then, so I found a place for the King Griffey Jr. bat, and I'm going to do this without giving it away. So follow me around my man cave, if you would. So you've seen this corner here. This is kind of my King Griffey Jr. corner. Well, what I did is when I found a spot for my King Griffey Jr. bat, it allowed me to move all of his air quotes rookie cards up above his bat. So this allowed me to put out some different King Griffey Jr. cards that I have in my collection that I hadn't been able to get out and display yet. So that's what's up here now. So now I'll walk back around. I'll pardon the mess in the man cave, by the way. Baseball season's been kicking off. We're having preseason practices, so I've been a little bit busier. Here's the stuff that I just recently received that I did a video on for the mail day that I showed you all from my new buddy out in Oregon. But here's what I did with the King Griffey Jr. bat. So I wanted a big shelf with a bat mount that hung underneath it, but I couldn't find one. So I ended up just getting kind of a cheap bat hanger off of Amazon. And it's actually a little bit crooked because the holes were hidden, and it was kind of difficult to mount. But above that, I lined up all of his rookie cards. And mainly I wanted to show this to Dan because he wanted to see what it looked like after I got everything hung up. And then this hangs right above the TV in between my two shelves. So there's that. I think it looks super cool, and that's a great spot up there for it. It fits very well. in there. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this. I'll get the camera set back up and I'll go through my basically SGC fandom. I'll be right back with you. All right, so I'm back. Let's talk about SGC now. So, like I said in the intro, there is no perfect grading opinion or grading company in my opinion. They all, in one way, shape, or form, have their warts. I think we could all agree on that. But most of us, true passionate collectors, favor one, maybe two grading companies over others. So I guess the biggest thing that I like about SGC is the consistency and the accuracy I feel in their grading. Anytime I've gotten a grade that's come back from SGC that was lower than I thought it should be, once I looked at the card more closely, I found a flaw that I hadn't caught before. And in some of those cases, it affected the grade up to a grade and a half or so, usually. But that's my fault. Once I found what I had missed, then the grade that I got made a lot more sense. So to me, that's a big deal, is the consistency and accuracy of the grade. I'm not gonna, bash any other grading company. I have a lot of PSA slabs. I have a BVG slab. I have a CSG slab. So I don't adamantly dislike any of the grading companies. But in my opinion, you're never going to see a card submitted to SGC that comes back as a 6 and gets cracked out and resubmitted back to SGC and comes back a 10. To me, the variation in the strictness of an individual grader, really the variance in there, if they are consistent with their grading standards, should never be more than, again, this is my opinion, than maybe a point on their grading scale. So I could see a card maybe sliding from an 8 to a 9 or a 9 to a 10, but how could a card go from a 6 to a 10? And so for me, that is something you would never see with SGC, and it just points to their consistency. And again, this is just my opinion, why I like SGC. So the second one is ease of submitting. So I'm not a tremendously tech savvy guy, but it's very easy for me to go onto SGC's website, create an order, print off the invoice, package everything, ship it out. That's easy. It doesn't really, for me, it doesn't get any easier. I don't have to pay for an annual or monthly membership. I don't have to do any of that. All I have to do is enter all my information into the computer, create an account, and then I can start sending cards out to SGC. And I love that. Simplicity to me, especially when I'm dealing with technology, as most of you know from my YouTube account, is a great thing. Number 3, I have down as look of the slab. So the SGC tuxedo look, either you love it or you hate it. I happen to love it. And I happen to believe that the vast majority of the cards look great in SGC slabs, especially vintage. And one of the bigger knocks that I hear a lot on about SGC is that the modern cards don't look as good in SGC slabs. And in my opinion, I don't agree with that. I think some of the modern cards, depending on the card, look amazing in SGC slabs. Here's one right now that I'll show you. 2011 Topps Cognac Albert Pujols. To me, in person, this card looks amazing in an SGC slab. Just with the black outline and then the the fake diamond effect on the edge of the card. I think it looks great. Another one is this Albert Pujols rookie card that I picked up recently. I think this one looks great in an SGC slab. And then, to me, like, I don't have any modern cards that I really just don't think look good in an SGC slab. Maybe with a couple exceptions that I'll show you here in a second. And then vintage is really where SGC kind of, makes its mark. That's really their comfort zone in what these vintage cards look like in SGC slabs. That's kind of what initially drove their popularity in the hobby, and in my opinion, that's what they absolutely do the best at and where they shine, without question, for the most part. But in my opinion, cards with darker borders get swallowed up in the black outline of the tucks. So, like, this Mancave card is pretty off-centered if you look at it closely, and I apologize for the glare, but it's really kind of hard to see in the SGC slab how off-centered it is, because the borders just kind of absorb the card's borders, I guess is the best way I could explain it. So I'm not a huge fan of 71s in SGC slabs. I don't think those look as good. And then some other cards that I don't think look as good, and I don't dislike them, I just don't think they look as good, is any card with a darker border. So this one, these 89 Donruss Baseball's Best, I don't even know if I would consider that a black border per se. Especially the regular Donruss cards, they look a lot more, dark gray. But I don't think this looks as good. And I think if the borders were maybe a lighter gray on this card specifically, I think it would look a little better. And I think some of the cards with a lot of black and white in them do look really good in an SGC slab, like the 1990 scorer Bo Jackson. I think that card looks amazing in an SGC slab. So cards like this are not my favorite in SGC slabs, but I'm not going to send them to someone else just because I think the card looks better. To me, it's kind of a minor, maybe annoyance would be the right term. And another big one for me is turnaround time. A lot of these orders that I send to SGC, and I'm never in a big rush to get my cards back from SGC. I don't need to get them back in 3 weeks because I have a show coming up or anything like that. I just want them back because they're my cards and I don't like them floating around out there and I don't know what's going on with them. So the turnaround time with SGC is great. I think I've been submitting cards to SGC since 2020 or 2021, somewhere around there. And I don't think I've ever had an order take longer than 30 days with SGC. And to me, that's great. I appreciate that a lot. And then, here lately, some of the submissions I've been doing, I've been sending these cards out. Let's say SGC receives them on a Monday. A lot of the times they'll be graded the next day on Tuesday or the day after on Wednesday. Then they'll go into post-grading processing the following day on Thursday. And then on Friday, they'll get shipped out. So to me, SGC has them in-house for 5 days a lot of times. And then as soon as it's marked that it's shipped, I can go in there and see the grades. And that's great to me. There have been certain orders I've submitted where they have graded them, post-graded process them and ship them all in the same day. Or there are orders where they have received them and graded them on the same day. Excuse me. And that's amazing to me. And then some of you are going to think this is funny, but I'll explain. To me, another big reason why I love SGC is the value of the SGC slabs. And some of you might say, well, wait a minute, you get way more value out of a PSA slab. And if you're selling it, you're absolutely right. But I'm looking at this from the perspective of a collector. So for me, the value that I get in SGC is I can buy an SGC card a lot of the times cheaper than I can buy a PSA card. Now, that's not always the case, and it's more and more the gap is closing more and more here recently. But there are a lot of cards out there that are considerably, 10, 20, 30% cheaper in an SGC slab. So for me as a collector, I can buy the cards that I want, I can get them cheaper, and I can have a pretty good feeling that they're going to be graded accurately. So for me as a collector, value is a huge thing. If it allows me to buy an average, to spend an average of $20 less or 20% less for every card I buy in SGC, if I buy 10 cards, I've saved enough money to go out and buy another card that I want to pick up. So for me, especially with my budget of $200 a month, over the long haul, that's going to make a big difference, saving that 20% roughly. I think that's pretty close to what it averages out to on buying a card from SGC. And then the next one, number 6, I am a big fan of SGC's customer service. I have had one issue with an order where for some reason I couldn't get it to process the payment that I had linked to my PayPal. And I emailed SGC and they got back to me the very next day and said, yeah, sometimes we have an issue with certain PayPal accounts. If you submit grades frequently, or if you submit orders frequently, we'll have a problem where your PayPal account won't work the right way for some reason. And he called me the very next day and told me, to try to link a debit card and see if that will work. So I did that and used my debit card to pay. And then since then, I've just always used my debit card and I've never had a single issue since then. But for them to get back to me the very next day, I thought was great. And to me, I'm kind of an old school guy. I would rather be able to hear someone's voice and get the issue resolved over the phone, as opposed to emailing back and forth over the course of a day, forgetting something that I meant to ask, having to send another email and wait for it to get sent back. Like, to me, it's just a lot easier to just pick up the phone and handle it that way. And that's how they handled it, and I appreciate that tremendously. And then the last thing, number 7, the last reason that I love SGC is the app. Now, to me, this isn't a game changer, and I know, a lot of people want them to come up with a set registry and all that stuff. I'm not a set registry type of collector. A lot of these cards that I'm buying, I don't particularly care what the pop count is in a Lou Brock 1962 tops in an SGC 6. Like, that's not what I'm looking for when I buy these cards. Now, SGC has a pop count and it works. But the app makes everything better, makes everything easier. So some of you know that here within the last few years, SGC started uploading their seller-ready images. So once they finish your submission and they ship it, you can go into the SGC account and check your grades and you can pull up the image of that card. They already have it uploaded into your submission, and all that stuff is linked to the app. And as a matter of fact, now when you use the app, if I submit a 25 card submission to SGC, once those cards pop in the app, it's automatically going to download that into my collection. And I think that's pretty cool. Now, it can be a detriment if I'm sending a 25 SGC, 25 card order out to SGC, and 20 of them are Chris's, and all those cards pop in the app under my collection, and really only 5 of them are mine, and then I've got to go back through and remove them all from the app. But to me, that's a minor inconvenience. It's not a huge deal. So now, a couple things that I don't like about SGC is the security of the slabs, and to a certain extent, the security features in the flips. Now, this could be a positive because SGC isn't changing their flips all the time to add security features. It could be a negative because maybe they're just not as secure as, you know, TAG or SG or PSA or CSG, some of the other grading companies, or CGC now, sorry. But to me, the slab itself, I don't mind the feel. I think the feel of the slab is fine. I think the clarity of the slab is fine. I don't have a problem with that. But to me, it just feels like it's a little, maybe flimsy is the right word, a little fragile. I don't know the exact words to use. I've never had a problem with an SGC slab popping open, coming unsealed, or anything like that. So I may be nitpicking a little bit here, but to me, the slab just doesn't feel as secure. Now, it feels like it's more substantial. It's more robust than a PSA slab, but it's not at the level of a BGS slab as far as sturdiness to me. And then I can also put this on the negative side, value. So resale value. I'm not a seller. I think, here over the next year or so, once I get more of my older cards graded that junk wax era cards and stuff like that, and I get duplicates, then maybe I'll sell cards at shows in order to buy other cards that I don't have. But right now, I'm not a seller. But what I mean by, or how I mean this as a negative, is eventually I'm not going to be here anymore. And hopefully it's a long time in the future. But, and maybe SGC will be the big dog on the block and have all the resale value. So we don't know what's going to happen in the hobby as far as, value of slabs go or anything like that. Maybe at some point, the top grading companies will all have the same value. It's really hard to say what's going to go on in the future. But if I were selling cards right now, which again I'm not, the resale value of an SGC slab can be less. So that could potentially be a negative. But again, for me as a collector, I look at it as a positive because then I can get the card cheaper. But one of these days, someone is going to have to sell my cards when I'm no longer around, or maybe 20 years from now, I decide I want to sell everything and retire and move to the Bahamas or something, right? It could be a negative then. And then I already touched on this again. Certain cards don't look as good in the SGC slab. The darker bordered cards, in my opinion, do not look as good. They hide the border of the card in certain circumstances and make it harder to determine edge issues, or not edge issues, but centering, stuff like that. Now, edge issues on a 1971 Topps card are going to stand out in any slab, But to me, it stands out even more in an SGC slab because of the black tux gasket. So in that way, I guess it could be a positive that it will help determine chipping on the surface, or a dog-eared corner or something like that would stand out better in an SGC slab. And then one more slight negative that I didn't put on my list, but I just thought of. So I have had one issue in all the orders that I submitted to SGC of the card sliding underneath the gasket, underneath the black portion of it. And it was, well, hang on, I'll pause the camera and I'll grab the card and show you exactly what I'm talking about. I'll be right back. So this card here, this is a 1997-98 Topps Generations Anthony Hardaway. So I sent this one into SGC, and when I got it back, this peak up here had slid underneath the top part of this gasket. Luckily, I was able to kind of give it a tap, and it popped back out. I don't know what material this card is made out of, but I don't know if it's cardboard. And when it flipped out, it made kind of a like tink, like it flipped out. And I looked at it with a loupe, I looked at it with a magnifying glass, and I couldn't see that it had damaged the card. So to me, in this instance, you know, no harm, no foul. It didn't do any damage to the card. But I could see with certain cards, if that happened, to where it could mess the edge of the card up pretty good. So really, that's what I like about SGC and what I don't like about SGC. I can't see in the near future me grading with any other grading company. Now, would I like them to be $10 a card instead of $15? Yeah, sure I would. But compared to where we were at a few years ago, the cost of grading cards has come down tremendously, and that's great for me. So again, they all have their warts, right? They all have advantages and disadvantages. I'm not here to tell anyone that SGC is the only company you should grade your cards with. This is just my opinion on why I grade with SGC. And then, so I've had a few, comments, like I said, on my channel. I wouldn't have any of my cards in those junky SGC slabs. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion. I'm not going to fault anybody that we don't see eye to eye, and everybody doesn't see SGC as the greatest grading company on earth. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion. They just happen to be who I'm comfortable with and who I feel grades my cards consistently and accurately, and they get them back to me quick, and they look nice in the slab when I get them. I've had questions about why would I crack a card out of a BVG slab and submit it to SGC. Again, that's fine. If that doesn't work for your collection, that doesn't work for your collection, and do what works for your collection. That to me works fine for my collection, especially with my 1960 top set. Those are the only cards that I've ever cracked out of a BVG slab and sent into SGC. And really, the grades only on my Alk line that went from a 5 or a 5.5 to a 3.5 is really the only card that changed by more than half a grade. So for me, it's worked out well, except for in that one case. But I like consistency in my collection. Now, I'm not at the level to where every card has to be SGC, but I like mine to be an SGC and PSA slabs. The BVG slabs, I don't think they look as good. I definitely don't like the BVG flip. And I just think the cards look better in SGC slabs. That's what I chose to do with my cards in my collection. I'm not telling anyone out there what to do in theirs. So I think that's pretty much going to wrap it up. So if you stuck around this video, again, as almost always, it's longer than I had intended. This is going to be, a 25, 26 minute video. So if you stuck around, till the end. As always, I appreciate you. And thanks for watching the video. If you haven't already, please give this one a like and subscribe to the channel if you would. I'd appreciate it greatly. And until the next one, I hope everybody has a good one, and I'll talk to you later.